On the conversation of building Ghana's future leaders in diplomacy and policy advocacy, the young diplomats of Ghana has made immense strides in shaping some of the finest minds in policy and diplomacy. My name is Velma Naa Adjeley Otchwemah, and I'm proud to call myself a delegate of the 6th cohort of the Young Diplomats of Ghana. Today, we're going to be having a conversation on how the application process is like. We're going to be taking different perspectives on how it all began for us. And I am joined by my co-panelists who will be introducing themselves.
I'm Jonathan, also a YDG Quad 6th delegate.
My name is Pamela Tammy Manu, and I'm also a delegate of the Circle of Young Diplomats of Ghana. I'm an aspiring diplomat, and I'm passionate about trade and investment, security, policy, and sustainability.
All right. My name is Nana Owusu-Mensah. I'm a medical doctor by profession. I have an interest in global health, climate change, and health relations. So I'm excited to join the 6th cohort of YDG delegates.
Amazing. So we have 2 medical doctors. You didn't mention you're a medical doctor.
No,
We have 2 medical doctors. We have a very beautiful lady who is interested in policy and international relations. And I happen to be a law student. So we're going to be having very diverse perspectives as far as the application process is concerned. But first of all, I'd like to know, starting from you, Pamela, how did you find out about YDG?
So the first time I found out about YDG was back in 2024. That was the first time I applied, and it was through social media. I was applying for my master's degree in international relations, and so I was looking for spaces where I'll be aligned with that path. And so I came across your social media page, and it immediately stood out to me because I noticed how youth-driven it was, and it wasn't just about learning about policy, but it was engaging with the topic of policy and other diplomatic avenues.
I see. Interesting. You mentioned the first time you applied was 2024.
Yeah.
So when was the second time you applied?
The second time was the recent one where they brought out applications, and then I knew that this is whether I get it or not, and I knew I definitely was prepared for this opportunity. Yeah.
So you gave yourself like a 1-year gap.
Yeah. I see during that gap, I was preparing myself for this moment because I did get into the master's program, and so I learned so much. There has been a lot of personal growth throughout that period. So
That's interesting. Nana, how do you find out about YDG?
Oh, okay. For me personally, I think I also found out through social media similarly, but that was from 2 of my friends. Let me give them a shout out. That was Erasmus and Otenewa. So I think they were in the previous YDG cohort 5. They used to post about some YDG stuff, and I found it very interesting. So I went to their website, was reading about it, and their Instagram and TikTok too. They do post a lot there. So that's where I heard about YDG from, what they do, what they stand for, and that's where I got the inspiration to apply.
I think this is your sign to follow YDG on all social media platforms.
Yeah.
On Instagram, on LinkedIn, TikTok, and X. Okay, so Jonathan.
Yes, so for me, it goes way back to nearly 4 years ago while in my final years in medical school. I used to see a lot of posts on Facebook, but then I didn't think it was something for me at all. And so recently I met some of the delegates from the previous cohort, and we started having conversations about how they got in. And some of them were also medical doctors. And so I felt I saw myself in there. So I did the background work, and then I learned more about it, and now we are here.
What else do you find when you're doing the background work?
So I learned about diplomacy more broadly to understand that it's not just about trade or politics, but then there are different types of diplomacies, and different professionals can fit into the space. And so it's an open space for different kinds of people.
See, my story is similar to everyone's. You mentioned Otenewa. Yes, shout out to Otenewa. I saw how involved she was in YDG, and I saw how she used to go to like all these offices. They used to have these workshops, and I thought, oh, looking at how I know I do not want to just remain in the law field, like litigation, I think YDG is a perfect platform for me to figure out what my future career is going to look like. What was that one thing, that one push that made you apply for the Young Diplomat of Ghana starting P?
Okay, so the push goes back to COVID,
Oh,
the infamous COVID-19, and then the stories around it, particularly relating to our continent as a whole, and then the stories the international media were sharing about us and the devastation that we were to expect if things went ROI. So that was the narrative. And so being in medical school at the time, I heard the stories and I thought to myself, I want to be in a space where I can influence some of the policies or the decisions that impact health outcomes in the continent, from the vaccines acquisitions to the laws that govern how supply chains run across the world. And I felt when I saw the opportunity came, I took it.
okay.
Wow.
Amazing. Nana Owusu.
Okay, so for me, I must say that the main thing that pushed me was I was looking forward to being in a community or being in a group with like-minded individuals. So though I have interest in global health and health policy, I know that when I join YDG, I'm going to be working with so many young minds, sharp, brilliant minds. And even just at this panel, we have Lawson and we have Pamela in international relations. So I just look forward to working with younger people and learning more about policy and advocacy. And that is what I'm hoping to get. So that's what pushed me to apply for YDG.
Pamela.
Yeah, so I'll speak of both times. So with my first attempt, it was me trying to find myself in spaces that align with international relations. So I had applied for a master's and I knew that YDG was the space. However, I wasn't entirely prepared for it because even throughout the process, especially at the final stages, I realized how nervous I got and how I had allowed that to take basically self-sabotage. But with the second attempt, I resonate with Lena's reasoning a lot because you're able to find yourself in a group of young, youth-minded, driven people that are able to understand different perspectives and not allow that to conflict our ideologies. I'm able to learn so much from our two medical doctors over here. And so even though I've learned about pandemics today, I can learn about it from a medical student's point of view and understand it much more and much better and be a part of the policies that are surrounding public health and so much other areas as well.
I see. So since we're talking about the application process, Pamela, in your opinion, who do you think YDG is going to be perfect for? Education field, health field, natural resources field? Who do you think this is perfect for?
I believe that YDG is perfect for any young Ghanaian, regardless of the field you find yourself in. You can easily be amongst any cohort out there because with YDG we have people from law backgrounds, medical backgrounds, me having international relations background, and it's very, very diverse. It doesn't narrow only into one space. And so you need to be intentional about what you want to achieve and learning from different people and not just trying to contribute, but also understanding that there's a need to learn from different people. So any young Ghanaian out there that is aspiring to be in such spaces like this is definitely for you. I'm excited about the journey and there's so much to learn from this. Yeah.
So since you're recommending this to any young Ghanaian, let's get straight into it. How you actually apply for YDG. And for context, they give you a notice of the application window being opened. Then the application window is actually open. They give you reminders of the deadlines. So there are 4 parts. We're going to get into that. There's a part where you submit the essay along with your CV. There's a part where you take the aptitude test. Then there's a group interviews, and then there's the in-person interviews. Which one is your favorite out of these 4? Who can you enjoy the most?
I enjoyed the in-person interview.
I see.
Yes. I have a bias for being in the room with the people that I talk to, seeing them, seeing their mannerisms, and then it's sort of like a feedback loop that informs me what to see next and then what kind of answers to give. So I enjoyed that part.
Nana, which one was your least favorite? Most never.
This is a very interesting because my least favorite was the in-person interview.
I see.
Where my background comes from medical school, I was involved in a bit of student leadership association. So sometimes you go for a vetting, and before you go into the vetting, we know what's expected. And so if you deliver, you know. If you don't deliver, you know. And so you can come out and know the outcome. But for this one, I didn't know the kind of person they are looking for. I'm not 100% sure. And I did my best. I mean, but there were some questions that were a bit tough for me. So it was a bit, I wouldn't say tough, but it wasn't easy. And then when I came out, I couldn't say that, oh, I have killed it or I haven't killed it. So it was a bit 50-50. That was it for me, the in-person interview.
Pamela, let me take a very risky guess. Your favorite was the essay.
I love the essay.
Was that your favorite?
Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Okay.
I actually had two, the essay as well as the interview. And so the essay, because it was my second attempt, I was used to what I expected what would come. Not like I knew the exact questions, but I knew that you'd have to be honest with yourself and give a reflective answer to each and every question. And so that was one of my favorites, as well as the interview. The interview being my favorite out of them all because I had realized that I had been very intentional with working with what I had struggled with the first time, and I'd seen the effort I put into. So I was really expectant of that, and the outcomes have been great. I'm a delegate now, so that's amazing. So it was definitely those two. Yeah.
I want to kind of add to the part where, as she mentioned, that it's reflective because you can research all the papers, you can read all the sites and the articles, but if you don't add your personal touch to it, it just loses context there. That will not be relevant to the interview.
I think that's actually very true. There's this thing they teach us in school that we want to hear your voice. Don't just do it in authorities in there. Well, I think one thing that YDG has taught me is to always check your email. Yeah, because if you want to apply for YDG and not checking your emails, then you are going to miss, say, a notification or something like that. And maybe I read the email a little too deeply, but I realized that they painted the picture where it was going to be very competitive.
Yeah.
And things as tiny as grammatical errors could differentiate you from a potential applicant and someone who has no chances of entry. So for the essay, I took my time, but just as Pamela said, my favorite was the in-person interview. Now let's take it from the top, the essay. But before we get to the essay, you have to submit your CV. You have to submit your resume. Yes. What do you think you can put on your resume, even if you are an undergrad and you haven't really delved into the professional space? Because I am an undergrad, and the perception, I guess, is undergrads think they have not really entered into the professional space and there's nothing to put on their CV. And I think you should answer that. What do you think you should put on your resume?
What you should put on your resume, I would want to say that you'd have to reflect who you are first of all, and so maybe the positions you have taken, roles you have held anywhere. Might be little, a committee member, this, that, but you can put it all on your CV. But I think another thing too is you have to try and shape the CV tailored to YDG. So let's say maybe you're in law school or you're even in business school, but you're on this external relations committee. So now you can paint the picture of your work as an external relations committee member, so that it sort of links to the young diplomats of Ghana, what they are looking for. You understand? And you just pitch yourself on your CV to be who you are and what you are doing. That is the honest answer and the best way I think you can approach it. And to the undergrads, I would say apply. You don't lose anything wrong. You don't lose anything by applying. And so once you apply, you give it a shot and you see how it goes. They can even stand as you're here as an undergrad, you're working with professionals. I'm sure there are also other undergrads in the program and it will help. So yes, they should apply.
Amazing. So let's get into the essay proper. There were about 7 questions. Section A, where every question is compulsory, and then section B, where you had to answer 2 out of 3 of these questions. And let me take another guess. I like guessing with Pamela. I don't know why. But Pamela, you answered this question. Global power shifts are reshaping international relations. Discuss one global event in the past 2 years that you believe has significant implications for Africa's political or economic future. Did you answer that?
Yeah, so I
Give it up for me.
Yeah, I did answer that question.
Yeah.
That was one of the external questions which you could choose from. So I answered that question. Yeah.
how did you tackle it without giving too much? How do you
Mhm.
tackle it?
So I would say in today's day and age where we have the internet and there's so many media outlets out there where you'd be able to hear what's going on in the country, outside the country, it's important to actually see what really resonates with you. And so that's what I did. I wanted to understand that with YDG, we're looking at potential people that are interested in being part of policy advocacy. And so I looked at what was happening in the world globally and I ensured that my answer resonates with that, because as much as you want to let the team know that, oh, you know everything that's happening in the world today, you can put it to paper. It's important to understand that you have to resonate it with the agenda and the motive of wanting to become a delegate of YDG. Yeah.
Amazing. Jonathan, I'll come back to you very briefly, but I want to ask Nana also a question since you were talking about the undergrads.
Yes.
So there was this particular question I found very interesting. It says, imagine you're writing a letter to your future self to be open in 2035. Beyond career achievements, discuss one concrete change or impact you hope to have contributed to in your community or country. Explain why this contribution matters and outline how you intend to help bring it about. How do you think someone should approach such a question? Looking at the fact that why did you want to see what you have to offer?
Okay. So that question is a very loaded one, honestly, and it forced me to do a lot of self-reflection, not just about what I want to do, but why do I want to do what I want to do. And for that, you do have to look at in the next, that was 2035, so about 10 years from now, where do you see yourself? What motivation is going to be pushing you to even do better? And I think to approach it, you just have to envision your future, and then not just who you will be, but what will be driving you. It may even be driving you now, even as an undergraduate, what is motivating you, and if it can motivate you even up to that point, and then you just try and put it on paper. So for me, it was a reflecting question, and I actually enjoyed writing that essay because I had to think, put it on paper, and then express myself. So that's how I would encourage others to also approach it.
Amazing. I like that question because I've been having lots of conversations with my friends on how the future looks like for me and then my friends. So it felt like a freestyle question. I wrote it as a friendly letter. Dear Velma in the future. So I ended Velma from 2026. And at that point, I was annoyed with like bureaucracy going on in the school community. So I wrote, oh, I hope at that time you would have done something about it.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But let's go back to Jonathan. So summarize the essay aspects. What do you think made you pass the essay aspects of the application process?
Because my background was in medicine, I tried to focus on health issues and then brought my unique perspective to the issues. So one of the things that I specifically went into was the crackdown on multilateralism, especially with the US pulling out their funding aid and then all the devastation that is bringing. So I tried to go a bit into that. We know that diseases, they don't have borders. We said that with COVID. Started somewhere in one country before we realized the whole world had to come to a standstill. And so we need that multilateral approach to handling diseases. And that was the perspective that I hammered on. I sort of went deep into that.
Easy. That's great. So we're done with the essay aspects for now. We're going to the aptitude test. I asked everyone what their least favorite was. I think that was my least favorite. Because when I was researching on when I was researching on, oh no, it was great still. When I was researching on young diplomats of Ghana, I saw this picture of like international relations, all of that. And then when I was answering the questions, it gave me government questions like the bond of 1844 type of questions. So I was a little bit thrown off my feet. In fact, I sort of disqualified myself after the aptitude test because I was aware it was going to be very competitive. Pamela, how do you think you prepared for the aptitude test, comparing your first try and then this one?
Yeah, so the aptitude test, there's a time, you're being timed.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're answering the question, you're not wasting too much time, but ensuring that you're giving the right answer. So the first time I was really, really nervous And immediately I finished, you see your score. And so when I saw my score, I was like, okay, I possibly do have a chance. But then it was just the nerves that was pushing me back and limiting myself. And so the second time when I did it, I ensured that I'm prepared mentally. I'm not focusing too much on the time that is there, even though you have to be consciously aware of it so that you don't find yourself lacking. Because the questions do come off as very, very general, pertaining Ghana and international relations. And so if you don't really know what is happening in Ghana's foreign policy today or some years back, it may throw you off. And so maybe that's just a tip. Just know what's happening in Ghana's foreign policy and some years back. And so maybe I'm giving myself a crown, but like I think just based off a lot of exams that I've taken in the past, it did contribute and help me do better this time around. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And I think one thing I've learned from the experience that you've shared is you actually gave yourself time to learn and come back better. I honestly believe that with YDG, you don't transform yourself in a short space. If you really want to do this, take your time, learn, genuinely be interested in what YDG's mandate is before you apply. Right from the beginning, we all had a general idea what your application process looked like.
Yeah.
How did you prepare yourself mentally for the rigorous application process? Because right from the beginning, it was stated that the application process is quite competitive. How did you mentally prepare yourself for that, Jonathan?
I'm grateful that I've seen a few delegates from the past, and then to be able to learn from their experience, particular shout outs to Godwin and then Michael Baini. And I usually go to them. I'm calling them, I'm sending the text, I'm sending the voice notes, and they were quite generous and kind in responding to my nudges. And they did tell me you have to calm your nerves. The thing is hard, but it's not getting like that. So just calm down and be very reflective in your responses, be very guided, but then give thoughtful answers. And I think having them around and being able to go to them, okay, he had walked this path before, and so having their perspective also helped.
Yours is a little different from mine. I knew Erasmus, and then I know Otenewa, and I know they were delegates. But I have this thing where I don't want to raise someone's hopes that, oh, I'm applying for this, then I don't make it. And it felt like she coached me, then I didn't make her proud. So I only told Otenewa about my involvement with YDG after I made it. So it was kind of a secret. Yes, I was preparing myself by myself. I used to read articles, a few of them. I used to go through. In fact, I was reading the tips they've been given on what diplomacy is.
Social media.
I was doing all that by myself. Like I could just be in my bed, just chilling through their social media, their YouTube channel, because I didn't want to tell the world that I'm about to be a superstar. I don't make it. So that's the difference between yours and mine. Nana, do you have anyone helping you to prepare?
I wouldn't say I had anyone per se. I mean, I had just like Jonathan. I did have some friends. I asked them even before I applied what the process was like. But I saw this video on Instagram. I think she was a previous delegate, and it was like a 20-minute video. She spoke about the entire application process, right from the word go, what to expect. I think she did a Zoom session, and then other people joined it. I didn't join the Zoom, but
I joined the Zoom session.
Her recorded video. So that sort of laid the blueprint, what I'm about to enter. And she also mentioned that was quite competitive. So mentally too, I had to sack myself out. But that was a really helpful video, even from the word go. That's how mine went.
But today we've met our co-delegates, and it's just vibes. The competition, well, there's maybe some unspoken competition, but it really is just vibes. I think we're all here to learn from one another. So, Pamela, how do you mentally prepare yourself?
So, shout out to my family, my twin brother, and my parents. I say they were very
you had
supportive. Yeah.
Tell us.
And so, I mean, the first time, right from when I had gotten the rejection email, I hadn't allowed that to make me feel sad whatsoever because I had the master's interview coming up. So I learned from my YDG interview, okay, you need to compose yourself. You need to understand how to work under pressure because the panel isn't there to criticize you. They're there to learn about you and know that, okay, you are a possible applicant. You are meant to be part of this. And so that really did help me. And with the second time, like I said, my family was very supportive. And I knew very well that if I'm to apply to YDG again, it would definitely be when I'm prepared. I think the preparation stage really is important because there's a beauty of growth. There's a beauty of being intentional about improvement. And one main thing is your communication skills, how easy you're able to articulate your thoughts. And that's something that I learned throughout this process. And I believe I contributed a lot to my interview process. And so it's been great. Shout out to my family again.
So we're done with the first two parts of the application process. Now we're going to talk about the group interview, starting from Jonathan. How was it like?
It was a very open space, and I wasn't used to sharing my thoughts. Even doing social media videos was a big deal for me. Then here's a whole team of people and then experts that you had to be sharing your ideas with, flowing, bringing different perspectives. I mean, I had to hammer in again on the health aspect. And so it was a bit jittery from the start. So when we started, I had to take a pause, just hear other people's views before finally bringing myself home and then bringing out my own thoughts. So
See, on the group interview, did you see anyone you knew? Like, I mean, the applicants.
not in particular. There was no one that I knew personally.
Did you?
Yes, I saw one person I knew personally back from University of Ghana.
Okay.
I saw her at the group interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm asking because when we had the group interview, I saw the caliber of people applying for YDG. So it rang, okay, these are the type of people applying. You better put in your best. Yes, so there's that feeling where you come to sense the fact that you are applying for something big. So you really have to put in your very best. But Pamela, was the group interview nerve-wracking considering your previous experience with the application process?
So this time around, I mean, with the group interview, you're now putting to face, you're seeing the other applicants for the first time, and they're all possibly, difficult to become delegates. And so that was the only nerve-wracking point. But as I said, learning and using the time from before to actually understand how well to manage pressure and deal with that and not really allow that to show and take things really, really carefully was how I approached it. And understanding that even though it's a bit competitive, it's important to approach it differently because you're not just there to show that you're better than anyone else because everyone is good at what they do as well, but actually letting the panel understand that, okay, you are a good team member. This is an attribute of yourself which we need as to be a part of Young Diplomats of Ghana. And so it was an interesting session because we were asked various questions. And I remember during my group interview, I wasn't part of the first people to raise our hands to answer the question because I really wanted to hear from the other delegates. However, I was the first to introduce myself, so that did catch me off a bit. But then I was able to, compose myself. It's all about composure, really. And then I was able to answer the questions meaningfully and contribute meaningfully because that's the main point of it. Yeah.
Yes. Nana Owusu, did you in any way, intentionally or unintentionally, balance the need to stand out because it was a group interview with the time given and then the fact that you are applying with other people? Did you sort of balance that intentionally or unintentionally?
Okay, yes. So I think I balanced it intentionally. And I say that because one side of you wants to stand out and be remembered in the interview. Another side of you also remember that it's a group interview and they are looking for team players. And I think what worked for me was I didn't try to talk too much, but when I spoke, I tried to rehearse what I would say or have a plan in mind so that every time I speak, I'm articulating. And then also it was a very interesting group. We had a lot of diverse views, even on the same topic. People are coming in from different angles. So you meet someone, you can agree with this person, support this person's point, and then you may have to respectfully disagree with someone else's point. But still, at the end of the day, making sure that you work as a group and your voice is heard. So I had to work on that sort of balance in the group interview.
My experience with working with people is if you are a great listener, you tend to be trusted. So I made, even though for some of the questions I tried my best to answer first, I made sure that in some of my answers, I tied in what someone else said. So I could say, so as this person said, I agree with this and this and this. And I also made sure to nod when people were talking. So I'd like, oh, she's listening. That's how I tried my best to stand out. So it's not like I'm here for just myself, but then for what the group interview is, hearing everybody's view. Do you have any last comments on the group interview?
So that's just about it. It's a team play. So
Yeah.
you are trying to put yourself out there without necessarily diminishing
Other people.
other people. So
This goes to show the fact that we're here to learn from one another.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go to class. Okay. So last one, we're going to the, well, not last one, but we're going to the one-on-one interview. You know why you're first? Because it was your least favorite.
Yeah, it was actually my least favorite. And
What was the
others-
most difficult question they asked you?
So they asked me about what problem do I think is bothering Ghana and affecting Ghana socio-economically. And I answered that. And the next question was, how can diplomacy solve that? And I was answering that, and I was asked that, isn't that being done already? What more can you do? So it was a bit like going to the deep of the deep. And I think that was a bit nerve-wracking for me in the one-on-one interview. But aside that too, I think what also made it a bit shaky was there was no clear blueprint of maybe this is a marking scheme, or I didn't have access to that. So even leaving that room, I didn't know whether I had excelled. You see, with the aptitude test is out of 100, the percentage is shown. You know how much you get, you know what you are going home with. But this one, because there was no such information, I couldn't really tell how I had performed in their eyes and even in my own eyes. And so I think that was the one-on-one interview for me.
But early on, you mentioned that YDG's application process wants to see who you are. So you were just being yourself, don't you think?
Oh yes, I was viewing myself, but at that point, I wasn't too sure if myself was who YDG was looking for. There was that sort of shaky line, yeah. But I still try to stay true to who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe in. Just at that point, I wasn't too sure if that was who YDG was looking for and if I'll be a delegate. But I'm here, so thank God.
See. So Pamela, let's compare your first application to your second application. How do you think you learned from the experience?
So it's more about acceptance when you're willing to work on where you have struggles with and being intentional about it and acknowledging it. I think that's just the beauty of growth. And so with my first attempt, I would say like that was like probably would have been my worst part of the entire process because I was really, really nervous. And so usually when your nerves kick in, it's hard for you to articulate your words and it's hard for you to adjust what you mean and what you're trying to say. And so it can come off as you're unsure of what you're saying, and it can come off as being a little bit dishonest because you're not able to go with the flow. And so acknowledging that and seeing that that was where I fell short and understanding that I genuinely need to work on that, it really did help me approach the second time very much differently. And I told myself that if I wasn't yet prepared to be part of YDG and work on where I fell short, then I wouldn't apply. And so even with the application, I applied 2 days to the deadline. And so the second time I approached it as a conversation because again, they're there to know who you are, what you can contribute if you're willing to learn and put in the time to be a good delegate. And so the second time was, honestly, that interview has been one of the best interviews I've ever sat in. And so I'm really, really happy for their growth. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, amazing. So Jonathan, as a medical professional, yes, how do you think you highlighted on your background as far as the interview was concerned? Because I think we've all come to accept the fact that YDG wants to see who you are and what you have to offer.
I had to tell my story, of course, my COVID-19 story. Yes, and then how is playing out in my professional ambitions. And one thing that came up was, especially with the influx of professionals, you're seeing a lot of them leave the country, and it sort of came up, and then I had to come up with a solution if I was in the place where I could influence that outcome. And I think approaching it from a more conversational point, I mean, these are people who are policy leaders, these are experts in certain fields, and they just want to hear your perspective. And so bringing that out was what it was all about for me. And so it turned out to be my favorite part. And I will agree, I was nervous from the start. But I even started coughing at it, to be honest. Yes, but it was a conversation. And so you had to put yourself back in there, calm yourself, and then have the conversation.
Let's see. I like the fact that you mentioned it was about telling a story. I think I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. Yes, I'm actually pursuing a career in fiction as a novelist. And for me, I highlighted that in the one-on-one interview. Yes. I sort of anticipated questions to answer them before it's thrown at me. I knew that because I was a law student, I was going to get questions from the Constitution, since the highest law of Ghana. But right from the start, I sort of linked what I have done in level 200, my achievements in level 300, to the fact that I'm writing stories. And I even mentioned that, oh, if YDG accepts me, and then like these are programs, I can write a beautiful story. And then when it blows, I was like, oh, it's YDG that did help me. So yes, I crafted a very beautiful story because there's some form of originality when you tell your story from your own lens rather than letting someone read your story on paper. I believe that one-time exams and one-time applications like resumes don't really do you justice. You can't introduce yourself like in a short time. I think YDG's application process is one of the finest I have ever come across. I've applied for a number of things. The fact that you give your resume, you tell a story, there's the interview, the group interview where they want to see how you relate with other people. In my opinion, YDG is one of the finest application processes. So if you want to apply for YDG, I think you should do some work and give it your best shots.
And I actually want to add to that because it's such an amazing process to the point that even during the first time when I got rejected, I learned so much from the process. And that really did contribute meaningfully to my master's program of the interview and me applying again. So the process is amazing. Whether you get in or not, it's a beautiful learning opportunity. And so I believe that you should give it a try.
I think we can all agree on one thing, that today's process has made us understand how it feels like to be applying as a delegate of the young diplomats of Ghana. It's a matter of storytelling and telling us exactly who you are and how you can make good use of the opportunities that the young diplomats of Ghana presents, as the motto goes. Building Ghana's future leaders in diplomacy and policy advocacy. So please follow YDG on Instagram, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn. I hope to see as many people apply to this beautiful program in years to come. Thank you.